So, I mean, that was one of the reasons we built Skillest, is because we wanted it to be completely agnostic so that we had all teaching styles and we didn't, we don't care
Yeah.
about labeling things or calling things anyway. Everyone's just trying to learn different methodologies. Everyone's just trying to make people better golfers. So that was
Yeah.
one of the reasons. So anyway, viewers, so we were just having a quick chat then off camera, and we're on now. So this is the great Alex Moore. So Alex Moore is doing great things. He's in Phoenix at the moment, but he spends a lot of time all over America, but is doing some cool things on Skillest now. He's teaching a whole bunch, which is super exciting. And we were just talking about influencers then, but do you want to just tell us a bit about yourself, Alex?
Yeah. So just sort of the story of me, or
well, tell us, like, where, I suppose, even where you're teaching at the moment. Who you teach is probably a good start, and then we can go into your influences. And
yeah, so I currently I've been, as I've used the Skillest app more and more, I've just seen a great trajectory for it, and I think it's a way that is going to really influence golf instruction over the next 20, 30 years. So I'm excited to kind of get in on the ground floor, and utilizing the platform to kind of help the students, because I really do think this is a really good way to keep people progressing.
yeah,
From my experience, I set up the month-to-month option, and I've got a lot of people that are really liking it, because we'll work on certain things, but I have more time with them at a cheaper price point. So it's really been helpful.
well, I mean, we're not trying to spruik skills too much here, but I mean, that is exactly why we built the platform. And believe it or not, and this is going to sound crazy, we actually think it's a better way to learn. Like, everyone's obsessed with the idea, oh no, I need to go and see someone in person. And but what that does is obviously limit you to the people that work around where you live. And then it limits you how often you can actually get the feedback loop going. And you and I both know as coaches that the reason people don't progress is because they come and see you, they disappear for 4 weeks, they come back, they've misinterpreted everything you said. I mean, that's the other great thing about Skills, I suppose, is that if you do use it during the lesson, they can go home and watch everything a million times. But largely they go home, they forget everything, they come back, and you give the exact same lesson that you gave to someone 4 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So obviously what this does is solve all those problems, where you can actually learn from the best coaches, or the coach that's right for you at least, the methodology or a style that you like. And then the feedback loop can literally be almost every day, really. And
it is that way. For some of the students, it is that way. I mean, it's daily, yeah.
And the thing is, like, it's not like you need to actually give a complete deconstruction when someone uploads footage to you. All they want to know is, am I working on things the right way? Okay, got it. And then they just keep hammering away at it. It doesn't require $150 another hour just to see if they're working on things the right way.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, and I think also, like, as good players, and I know you're a player yourself, good players know that if I'm going to work on something, I'm going to need this chunk of time. The students been kind of Yep. So can you hear me?
Yeah, we just got a little glitch in the internet there. Do you want to just start that little spiel again?
Yeah, so I think that how a good player looks at progressing is on a wider time scale, I guess. Whereas the general consumer or your weekend warrior, they're kind of looking for that one tip, like that one thing, or the new training aid, or the new so I think the Skillest platform really allows for a much better learning experience overall. And I've probably been told the same thing 5 or 6 different times before it really registered on, okay, why this is important and why it needs to fit into this sequence. So I really enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why, like, what we're trying to solve is the problem of, like, everyone's going online to learn, which I love, which I think is great. They're trying to view content and understand it. But really, there are so many different patterns, different ways of learning. Like, how are you possibly going to know what relates to you and whether or not you're actually applying something the right way? So you can watch YouTube and say, someone can articulate something perfectly, but you've got no idea if that applies to you. And I suppose what we are trying to do is make the creator of the content available for direct interaction. So we solve that whole problem of, okay, I want to learn online, but how do I customize that for myself?
Exactly. That's the biggest piece, is the customization and the personal interaction. It's just yeah.
That's wicked. I didn't mean to, sort of go on a Skillest rant there, but that's cool. But let's talk about you, because I love the way you teach. I love, obviously, your dedication, how much you have a thirst for knowledge and getting better at it all the time. From what I see, you're coaching other coaches, which is always a sign that you're doing something right. So do you want to talk about your influences from everything, from technical point of view, why you teach certain ways, to other things that hanging around other coaches that have helped you with communication skills and everything?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my background, I started golfing early. So I was 6 or 7 when I started playing tournaments when I was 11. But the influences that I guess, acquired at a young age came through my mentors at that time. And so those guys were really into Mac O'Grady. Yeah. And they said, Max, I mean, the guy's trying to play right-handed and left-handed on the PGA Tour in the 80s. Like, so, I kind of grew into this infatuation with just his story, and just, because I had a similar passion for the game. I think that part gets missed when people hear stories about, Mac. I think he just is gung-ho about golf.
Yeah.
And he loves it. And it's hard for people to hang at that energy level. But, so Mac was kind of the guy. So my instruction, I never really got instruction, though, as a youngster. It was just kind of playing and figuring it out. And that got me all the way to Oregon State, so playing at a Division I level, really without any instruction, just feel. I was a big time field player. And so I kind of learned by kind of modeling, I guess, just kind of watching guys and just trying to mimic what they do. I guess that's a lot of kids learn that way, it seems like, too. So, from there, I went to Oregon State, and then I started getting into stack and tilt stuff. Because at the time, the guy that I was training with a lot, his name is Brian Henniger, and he was kind of talking with Mike and Andy a lot of the time. And in that time period, stack and tilt, 07, 08, 09 was really, taking off. So I went to the stack and tilt stuff knowing that there was some synergy with the Mac O'Grady information, So I kind of knew that there's a lot of great information coming out of a few camps that have been around Mac and stuff. So I don't know any of the dynamics or the relationships, but and I don't really get into any of that stuff, but I'm just looking for the information. So I went from that to what we started was a company called Tathata Golf, which that instructor that I went to after Brian, he had spent some time with Mac O'Grady as well. So again, just seeking out his information. So, that bumped me into a few people now that have spent a lot of time with Mac O'Grady and are very knowledgeable. So from a player's perspective, it was always trying to get to that information. However, I will say that, there is a bit of a dichotomy between, trying to make things too perfect and still playing and competing. You know what I mean? You know what I mean on that? And
well, I think for a coach, sometimes it's almost impossible. And I've I've embraced that impossibility a little bit. I think that I've sacrificed my own ability to just go out and play for my knowledge, if that makes sense. And I do love playing golf and getting out there, but personally, and this is absolutely not what I recommend, and I do not want any of my students doing this, and I don't want any Skillest students necessarily doing this. We want to simplify it. But traditionally, I wouldn't have been able to go out and play without 2 or 3 swing thoughts. Yeah. And I would literally be in the heat of battle, playing an event, and dead set, I'd still be going through the process. Right wrist sits that, my right arm sits a bit lower, and then sets the sequence off. I would be doing that under the pump, and that could potentially be the thing that got me through, because it gives you so much process.
Yeah.
But that's my brain. That is the way I work. I am not a field player. I'm definitely not one of those people you could say, go out there and just feel it sort of thing, because I need more structure and answers to what I'm doing. But I would definitely not recommend that to anyone. I always say as well that you want to get your swing to a point. Or sometimes I have students where you'll give them a few things and they're like, oh, I'm thinking a little bit here. And I always say, well, you need to think initially to never think ever again.
Right.
There has to be that element of learning something and using your brain and really think, okay, that goes there, that goes there. Then you train it and it becomes repeatable in front of a mirror, and then you never have to think ever again.
Right.
But yeah, I want to make that clear. I never want to. I never want students to necessarily get that way. But so getting back to sort of the influences of even talking about like Stack and Tilt and Mac O'Grady, and obviously they have had a lot of blowback for a lot of ridiculous reasons because people love being right, don't they? And people love arguing for the sake of arguing. Yeah. What like if I said to you, what is it that gets people so upset about it? Like what is so contrary to traditional teaching that gets people so riled up?
Are you referring to those two models, or are you referring to just in general?
No, I reckon those models. If we talk about those models, why do you think, obviously when it, you had that cover of Golf Digest with Aaron Badley there, why did straight away, like people just, got their back up and said, no, this is not what you should be doing?
Well, in fairness to those guys, when they came out with the information, might have been a little bit too early. But I think, because I don't know if they had gotten all of Mac's stuff just yet. I think they were kind of still learning a little bit. And so, but even with that small percentage of information, or maybe a large percentage, it's all relative, but they had a lot of tour players having a lot of success, Yeah. And so I think they kind of had to strike when the iron was hot, and then put a brand on something and put a product out and get going, because that was good timing for them. Might have been a touch too early. The Golf Digest article, there's one mention of the shoulder plane pointing at the ball, and there's that might have been off in the Moore so there's little things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That might have been not ideal. But again, it's like, how do you when I look at Moore or Stack and Tilt, I look at like just a huge encyclopedia of information. And so how do you get that information out, in a 3-page thing in Golf Digest, so from my understanding, Mike and Andy were working with some guys that were kind of staying in flexion and moving off the ball a little bit. And so they started teaching them kind of how to get this in extension and stay more centered. And then, other instructors see them teaching this and, and Stack and Tilt and the branding. And it just kind of, I think it just went a little bit awry from the people that wanted to throw shade on those guys. But I think in my own experience with and it's limited, I'm not going to say, I can't say to be around Mike or Andy or Mac. I know enough to know that I'm going to have to be around them for a few years to know what they know.
Yeah.
Not 3 lessons. I'm not going to know what Mac or Grady knows in 3 lessons, or 1 golf school, or even a week golf school. So, I think that from my experience, the big thing with Stack and Tilt was how do we create the low point the same and really, really consistently.
Yeah.
And so that being the biggest kind of discrepancy between a 25 handicap and a +5 handicap is their ability to hit the ground in the same spot.
Yeah.
So in my experience with that, and that me not really knowing all the ins and outs, and to be fair to those guys, I mean, they came out in 07. We're now in 19. I mean, I know I've learned a lot in the last 12 years. Who knows?
Yeah.
How much are those guys learning as they go? It's a progression for all of us in this game, and especially teaching it. Sorry, but I was just going to say, from my experience, when I was working on some of those feels, gosh, my wedge game and my probably 7-iron down game got better than it's ever been.
Yeah.
Staying in the same spot, I'm turning, I'm hitting the ground in the same spot. All those concepts were very, very big for me. It was tough because I didn't understand the how
pressure
things move around and vary just yet. So at the time I was just kind of stuck this way. So I struggled with the longer clubs, but so in my own case, I kind of went from leaning a little bit left and, you know, really attacking the ground and not really releasing the club head to learn. And then I went to learning how to hit my long irons high.
Yeah.
So I started moving, you know, my spine angle around a little bit and changing some variations. And now we're, you know, starting to shift the arc around a little bit and hit it higher. But at the time I didn't know enough to keep my short irons and my wedges kind of where they were at. So when I started going this way more and started releasing it differently, the wedges got dicey.
Yeah.
And so I've seen kind of both ends of the spectrum, and then I found the middle lane somewhere after that. But it's all very interesting how the student interprets the information. I think as a coach is probably the most important interaction that you're working on. It's just, you know, are we on the same page with what we create?
100%. And, you know, I've said this to other coaches as well in the past, is that interaction, or every time a student comes to see me for a golf lesson, there is layers of sediment of shit that they, not necessarily shit, right? Some of it can be really good stuff, right? But it's these layers of sediment of conceptual ideas that they have, right?
Yeah.
They've got to, you know, extend away from the target with their arms on the way back, keep their arms straight, shift their weight, spin their hips on the way down, face the target, keep your head down. So these things just, you know, they layer upon each other to create sort of this visual model in their brains. And until you can have that deep conversation about what their conceptual ideas around their golf swing are, you will never fix them. You'll never help them. I shouldn't say fix because that's sort of quite a definitive thing, but you'll never actually long-term make them better, because you can be telling them to do something until they're blue in the face, but if they've got a totally contradictory swing concept with that, it's the hardest thing to do. And I think that's what Skillest really allows is, you know, you can really chat it out and talk it out, and you can take your time and really sort of break those things down that you are never going to be able to do in a 1 hour session every 4 weeks sort of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's another little rant for you, but let's talk about, so how do you, like, as all good coaches, I think you're always working on your action, right? So you just are obsessed with working at your own swing, probably like all good coaches, not because you want to play at the elite level, but because you're trying to figure stuff out in your brain.
Yeah.
So talk about, we briefly touched on this before, how do you then go and play with that? Or how do you take it to the course?
Well, you know, and that's something that I'm still evolving with, because I will still compete on occasion. I'm going to play in some events this summer. So, you know, from what I'm trying to do, just to plug Skillest one more time, this platform and the ability to take this on the road with me and still interact with my students if I want to go play in a tournament or do something like that, it's really, really ideal for me. But, you know, sometimes, while I was still learning my own self, it would be tough to teach and try to be a player, because that, like, you know, that little kid that takes his ball and go home kind of thing wants to just focus on themselves. You know what I mean? And so once I started to look at it more like a dual learning experience, I saw teaching really start to help my game, because I started to experience, you know, I've gone through what you're going through right now, or I remember these feels when I was working on this, or I know that these drills messed me up and these ones actually fit my game, you know, so that stuff really has been beneficial. And sometimes I'll even get in there on the range and try to mimic what they're doing and just see what they're feeling, you know what I mean? Kind of get a feel for it.
Yeah, that's great. I think you've got that understanding of process, don't you?
Yeah.
I think, you know, I think that's often why great coaches are always players that never quite made it, because they were just working so hard at the process all along. They weren't given these brilliant talents. They were given maybe enough to give them this ridiculous idea that they were going to be a tour player at some stage.
Right.
Consequently, they just build this huge amount of knowledge and put knowledge in the bank, and gives them a real understanding of process.
Yeah, and you know, one thing that Brian Henniger kind of instilled that in me, you know, even when we were working on our stuff, kind of my first half of college, because he said, you know, I've experienced it all. I've gone to pretty much everyone, you know, that you can play it on the PGA Tour. You have access to everyone. That's where everyone is, you know. So he's like, he said, but go experiment, explore, go in with a neutral mindset, just try to absorb, and just see where the coach is at from a neutral place versus coming in gunslinging, because there's a lot of that in teaching too. You have a new student come to you and it's like, all right, what's this guy going to tell me? They already come into it almost thinking that you're going to be wrong, or you know what I mean, like up front. So that part of it, I think overall we should all kind of look at as instructors as, not necessarily this guy's saying something incorrect or this guy's saying something incorrect, but they might have two totally different preferences. I always mention this, like to my students, I'll be like, okay, guys, there's high draw, there's high fade, there's low draw, there's low fade, and there's everything in between. So the movements that create a high draw are a little different than the movements that create a low fade. So if you get into some of these variations and like, okay, this guy prefers a high draw, so he teaches like this. This guy prefers or hates snap hooking it because he snap hooked it, and now he prefers this. So that's where I think a lot of the beef comes from. What if they're both right? You know what I mean? But they both have different preferences. So that's where I started to look at it from a more neutral place. After that level of ignorance kind of went away, and I saw everyone's trying to do the same thing and make their students better.
Everyone's just trying to make everyone better. And I think, as you said, everyone is so influenced by their own goal swing, it's ridiculous. Like, there's absolutely no doubt that, you fix other people the way you fix yourself or the way other people have fixed you. Like, you get that magic fix. You're like, oh, my God, I'm just going to tell everyone else to do that. So there's so many things from, the way we've learned, the way we've swung a golf club, the flights that we've had, to the student then having all of his or her preconceived ideas about what they need to do. Then you've got the limited time that they actually have to integrate things. Like, it's a miracle sometimes that you can get people to do what we want them to do. It's such a challenge, and I suppose it just brings me back to the idea that we've just got to move away from this idea that you have a 1 hour golf lesson every once in a while and it's gonna help. But let's have a quick chat now about social and Instagram. So I love it because for me, obviously, I just get so many ideas, and there's just so many great coaches out there, and it's been obviously fantastic for Skillest. There's no doubt about it, because we're able to help coaches like you connect with students all around the world. What are you thinking, and how do you consume the content, and what do you think it's done for coaching?
The social media element.
Yeah, the social media, like YouTube, Instagram, all that stuff.
I noticed, well, it's clear that students are looking for information for as cheap as possible.
Yeah.
That's clear. And that's, I think when you think about where students are looking for their information, they're going to Instagram, they're going to YouTube, they're going to these places to get, Facebook or whatever. They're trying to get tips or something, just something to take with my buddies on Saturday. I need something, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of parlayed into why this model works. The model that I'm doing works better, because if you're already looking for the information for free, that means you're already shifting out of this way of scheduling $150 lessons one-on-one for an hour.
Yeah.
So I think people are looking for the information at the cheapest way possible, and it kind of shows that they are somewhat willing to kind of figure this thing out on their own a little bit. So I think the coaching element is going to shift. That's a strong statement, but it might over time start to gradually get golf to where other sports are. It's like I just want to play the game, and get some basic stuff aligned and some good structure and some good fundamentals and some good foundation. And I think that, for instance, we're about Instagram. So on my Instagram, 90% of my followers are males, and the vast majority of them are kind of within that 20 to 40 age range on my end. So when I look at that group, and buddies my age, you know, getting into their late 20s, early 30s, they're trying to go on these golf trips and play with their buddies and get a little better. Maybe they didn't pick up golf in high school, but they want to get into this game, or they want to move up in the corporate ranks and start to play around their bosses a bit and join memberships. But like during that time frame of coming out of college, all you really have is debt.
Yeah.
And so now we're going to take on this sport that is going to be an incredible networking tool. But if in order to get good at it, you know, I probably need, you know, from 0 to how many lessons to get good. And then what's the cost attached to that many lessons? So for that age group, I'm noticing a lot of people in the 20 to 40 range are seeking out myself on Skillest, because they can come on month to month for $75, you know, come in for 2 months and get me for 60 days. And I'm just with them for 60 days.
Yeah.
So they're progressing for that same $150 an hour for 60 days. And so they're able to trend, which is huge for that age group, because they don't have the disposable income. Like we see most of the people buying products on the Golf Channel and stuff are in that 40 to 65 sort of age range.
Yeah.
So that's my kind of experience with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly what we're aiming to do. That's what we're aiming to do. So, you know, long road ahead, but we're super excited about it. So we're also trying to kill the Golf Channel. Like that's that's an objective number one, that's for sure. So yeah, that's great. Okay, so we'll probably have to wrap this up relatively soon. I mean, you and I think, could probably talk for 10 hours. But if you were going to grab the average golfer, and we've probably covered this a little bit, but and just explain to them, like, the one reason that they don't improve, like, what is it? Like, what is the one reason that, because largely they don't. Like, we know that the average golfer, whether they bought brand new clubs or they've gone for a couple of lessons, you know, the average golfer probably just hasn't seen the improvement that they expect. Why do you think that is?
I think that there has to be a shift in the expectation in their mind up front. I think that the Golf Channel and you know, the way the turnover of these new products and these new gadgets, you know, they've kind of misled the consumer into thinking that you're one tip away, or you're one new chipper away, or you're one new thing away from really dialing it in. And I think that just how to train to get better in golf needs to be kind of roadmapped for people a little bit better, of what to actually expect, when to see things trending, when to see things shifting, and then how to stay on the path, you know? Yeah. I think that the information, while it's great that it's readily available and so prevalent, I think you've got, you know, let's say we had 5 different books on golf, and we're just throwing out page 52 from this book and page 67 from this book and page 12 from this book. And that's how the consumer is taking in the information. So how are we going to tell that story? You know what I mean? When we're getting pieces of it sporadically. And some pieces might not fit, you know, from this model to this model to that model. These, you know, so I think that the expectation of how to train needs to shift a little bit, and just be able to kind of roadmap. And I really noticed that a lot of students don't get set up right. Like they don't get the fundamental stuff right. And then if they have fundamental flaws at setup, sometimes they'll be in their swing, but it's like disguised. It's not actually a swing flaw. Sometimes it's a setup flaw.
Yeah.
But they're only looking at the swing in motion. So I think the swing is the easy part. The setup and because then you get this setup on uneven lies, and now we got to adjust where our center of gravity is, you know, to counteract that. So I think if people worked more, that's why I really liked Nicholas's book. I'll just say one more thing. Nicholas's book, Golf My Way, was really eye-opening for me, because just how he approached the game was very simplistic. I thought was really good for beginners. Yeah,
and absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And just getting back to exactly what you said is, we think 100% true, is that we need to help people manage their expectations and understand a process more, because there's no doubt that when people come in for golf lessons, they think that the golf lesson is the end of it. That's where it ends. But it's the very, very start of things. Yeah. And, I mean, I always make the comparison. The problem with golf is that you can accidentally hit the greatest shot you've ever hit.
Right.
You can accidentally hole out, like, off the hosel potentially, and So you think it shouldn't be too far away. It's so close because look at that shot I hit once in one round. Whereas I say you never accidentally sit down at a piano and start playing Beethoven. You never accidentally jump in a swimming pool and swim 50 meters in 21 seconds. Like, it's the only game you can accidentally have brilliance. Like, so the problem is that it feels like for the average person, it's so close. Like, I should be able to do that all the time. But the reality is doing that every time is as far away as it is playing Beethoven for the first time. So, we need to try and create that that little bit more process around what everyone's thinking.
Well, and I also think, just I'll add to your point, you know, I look at this analogy sometimes too. Like, if I wanted to pick up skiing, I wouldn't just jump onto a double black diamond.
No.
You know, so it's a little bit, you know, I think that there has to be a progression and a building process, just like going from first to 12th grade. You know, it's just like a way to organize the information so that people can actually, you know, like I've gotten into some Buddhist meditation training a little bit, and I've read some books on Kyudo, which is like the longbow, or the Zen and the Art of Archery, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so golf's very similar to, like, I guess, archery in my head a little bit after reading those books, because you can just haphazardly hit the target, you know, occasionally, but then miss it the next 20 times in a row. But, you know, how they structure the training allows them to kind of at least know that if I'm gonna get to here where these 9th degree black belts are, then I've got a way to kind of move up the chain. So I think that's the same thing that happens with golf. It's just kind of haphazard, you know, type stuff that happens, and you're like, well, why can't I repeat that? Well, you haven't structured it and built it into where you can't mess it up.
Absolutely, yeah. And at the same time, as golf coaches, we can't hate that element, because it's the thing that brings people back and probably addicted to the game largely, is because you can. There is no other game that offers moments of brilliance like golf can.
Yeah, it's the best feeling in the world.
Yeah.
Playing good golf.
All right, mate. It's been great talking to you. We're going to do this probably a bunch more times with you. It'd be great to do it in person one day.
Yes, sir.
We'll be in the States in the near future, no doubt. So we'll get together and we'll chat it out some more.
All right, Baden. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Mate, absolute pleasure having you involved in the platform. And let's do this again soon.
All right. Thank you.
See you, mate.